Okay, so hi everyone. Um, my presentation is called AI is going to be better at design than you. So how do you adapt? I think we all know that AI is doing some crazy things in our market, so let's talk about it. Okay, does anyone know what this device is? No? Oh, great. Okay, just remember this image. Okay, so my name is Rino de Boer, 10 years of experience in web design, 170,000 subscribers on YouTube where I talk about Elementor, Figma, and how to run your own web design business with over 10 million views actually last month, so that's great. And I'm also doing client work on the side, which I sometimes explain on YouTube as well. So this machine, what is it? This is one of the first calculators that was invented. Technically, you cannot call it a calculator because it's an adding machine, but it's the predecessor to the calculator. And then this machine was the actual first calculator in 1772, which I don't know how it works, looks very hard to use. This one is the first commercially produced, so people could buy this. It's a mechanical calculator. So we're already 200 years now in the future compared to the first one. And then this one is the first one that you could put on your desk and that people could more easily buy. But still, this was a little bit hard to use in school. But when this device came, which was the first handheld calculator, then some things changed and people started to worry about what this technology would do to our brains. And then this beautiful article came in the newspaper. Math teachers protest against calculator use. This actually happened. And of course, these protests didn't do a lot because we still use math in school and we didn't change anything. Not that the school system cannot use innovation, but still, it's very relevant to use and to learn math. Because the calculator made it possible to teach much more advanced math, especially when even newer generations of the calculator came to class that I use in school myself, like these, where you could visually create a graph and therefore make much more complicated calculations in class. So now we're jumping to the future, because I think we all know that since the launch of ChatGPT, the world has been talking about AI, and remember, it has only been December last year. So some people are talk about ChatGPT with excitement, which I think most of us do, but others are a bit concerned. For example, our parents. And there's a big group of optimistic people who simply say that ChatGPT can be compared to the introduction of the calculator, with posts like these you can find now on social media. Because it can help us to get more out of our work. We can do our work faster with these new tools, just like the calculator did to the math class. This group, this optimistic group, also thinks that our work in the creative industry will be a lot easier. This is, of course, also true, but there's a point I want to make, and that is that it can be done a lot faster, but there is a danger. And there should be a video. Oh, it's not on my screen, but it is here. Let's see if it starts playing. Upper right corner. Oh, like that, okay. I want to show you an example of an AI tool that just came out. What was it, Milan? Was this from today? Yeah, Framer.io. Let's watch this video together. There's no audio, but it's just about the visual, so you should watch closely. Okay, so they have a button, a magic button. You click it, you create a prompt, a personal website for a photographer, and then it starts generating. This is super new. And of course, we all knew that this was coming, but before this, the only things that were possible were generating text and generating images. Here, you can do color palettes, maybe change some fonts. So this is really, really mind-blowing stuff, because this is the first product, the first big company, which is Framer, which actually created something that is more useful. I myself thought that Figma would be the first one, because Figma, as most of you know, has been bought by Adobe last year. And Adobe is massive now with AI. I don't know if you've seen like Photoshop AI, for example, or what they're doing with, what's this called? Firefly. But like this is impressive stuff, guys. So let's move on to the next. Does it work? No. Let's go back. Yes, okay. This one is also pretty interesting. It is a logo generator, but then mixed with like ChatGPT variant. I don't know if it's exactly ChatGPT. Maybe it's like the Google variant, but it doesn't really matter. It says, generate some logo ideas for a local daycare business. And then it asks you a question because it's not really sure. Happy Kids Daycare. And it generates quite some good logos, I would say, because I've done graphic design for 5 years before I went into web design. And yeah, this is something I would be happy with to send to my clients. So I think this is pretty cool. This one also very interesting, from a company called UiZord. And it can turn your sketch on paper, which you can see. Do you see my mouse? No, you don't. Okay, the first sketch, you see that? You scan it, and then it turns it into an actual wireframe on the computer within a few seconds. And then you can turn it into a visual design if you want to. And, you know, change the colors, and it's all based on the global level, so you can easily change it. This is really, really interesting because, let's be honest, you're a lot of the times what you're doing is you're sketching, and then you spend so much time clicking on all the things. You create text layers, you create images, and that takes up a lot of your time. So this is also very, very impressive example. I think so. You should check out this website, UiZord. I have another example, which is Elementor AI. I don't know how many of you guys use Elementor right now? Put up your hand. Yeah, that's quite a few. I use Elementor myself as well. Elementor, I hope, is also working on this, but I think the WordPress market will be a little bit later than these new cool companies like Framer and Figma. But I think it will definitely come. So let's see. Let's talk about time, right? Because time is money. This will maybe mean that the time to create a design will drastically go down, maybe even 2 times faster. But if you see how these tools develop, and this is only the first versions we're looking at, maybe we can go from 2 weeks for a full website to 2 days. And that, of course, changes a lot of things in business. So the optimistic people will say, it's only going to be easier from here to make money, right? We're all going to swim in money. Just like this guy, who looks very much like me. Okay, so I don't think it's going to be like this. Because I think this time it's different. It's so easy to say that AI is not going to replace our jobs, and it will just make our work easier. But I think this time is different. I think things will actually change a lot more compared to the introduction of the calculator. Because this view that I just described is a little bit like Tunnel Vision Pro. People who have watched the Apple presentation for last week will understand this joke. Because we have to take a look at the pool of people as a whole, and not just one personal perspective. Because saying that, yeah, my work is going to be easier and faster, is just looking from your point of view, your task list. So, point number 1. Less people will be needed. Let's take a look back, because this is an argument that I hear a lot. The introduction of the tractor. It didn't replace the farmers, right? But this is how the field looks before we had the tractor. Lots of people on the field. Right now we have this. I don't see a lot of people on this field. It would be very dangerous, actually. So let's take a look at the data. This is a graph of the amount of people working in agriculture throughout the last 150 years. And you can see a drastic drop from 1950, when a lot of farmers could afford a machine like that, and they were actually starting to get really good. So yes, we still have farmers, but a lot of people had to adapt to something else because there was simply no work anymore on the farm as there was before. So the tractors didn't replace all the farmers, but it did replace many people that worked on the farm. So that's why my point is that AI is not the same as the introduction of the calculator, even though it's being compared to that quite a lot on the internet. The thing is, the agency world is based on hourly inputs. So whatever pricing model you have, whether you make a calculation on hours, you do a fixed price, you do recurring payments, this is getting more popular, so monthly packages, or value-based pricing even. At the end of the day, it's all based on hourly input that creates a price. I mean, hourly inputs, you need hourly input to create a product. So there is no need for companies to keep 2 people employed when there is only work for 1. And here this is just an example, but it can maybe be even more extreme, as in the past 4 people did this and now it's only 1. So point number 1 is we're going to need less people to do the work that we have done until now. Okay, point number 2, the prices of our services will go down. Let's take a look at a few examples how this happened before in the past with other technological innovations. Example 1, the personal computer. This is an advertisement for a 10 megabyte hard disk, $3,500. If companies would charge this much today, then that will be really funny, right? Calling. So before, there were ladies and men who changed all the wires in order to make the connection with someone else. That's why it was much more expensive to call. Creating photos. We don't have to pay for a room anymore where your photos are developed. We just take it on our camera, and we take out the SD card, or even better, we just take a picture on our phone. Oh, Milan, by the way, can you make some pictures for me? Okay. Example number 4, reading. So ebooks are always cheaper because they don't have to be printed, all thanks to technological advances. And now let's talk about developing websites. So developing websites was a lot more expensive in the 2000s, where a small website could easily cost a company 20 grand to develop. And I'm talking about US dollars here. This, of course, was because there was no no-code tools. Everything has to be hand-coded. And even when they hand-coded, they didn't have design tools, so they kept coding stuff until it looked like something, even though it still looks like nothing. And they spent way too much time working with Microsoft Word art, as you can see, in order to add some kind of design to the website to make it a little bit more creative. So what is the effect of all of this? In order to compete, companies have to make their prices lower if the development costs go down, because otherwise they cannot compete with the others, because the others will make their prices lower because they can deliver the same product much faster. So it's all about competition that eventually drives the price down. This is good for the consumer and good for the companies if they know how to adapt, but not so good for the employees. So less people will be needed. And if you combine that with the second point, prices will go down, then you're going to get a pretty dangerous combination. Point number 3. AI is really good at specialization already, and we're just getting started. So the question isn't anymore if jobs will disappear and people need to adapt, but whose job is going to disappear? Because not everybody in the company and even in this room has the same skill level. So AI is good at certain things right now. Text generation, image generation with ChatGPT and Midjourney and DALL-E. Photo manipulation with Photoshop AI, but also layout generation, which we just saw with Framer AI. But the question is, why can AI be good at these things? Because this is where it becomes really interesting. It's all about patterns, because what the computer does is that it can find patterns in massive amounts of data. So let's take a look on how AI actually works under the hood. AI isn't actually that creative, which a lot of people think, but AI works with combining a lot of data and then analyzing that data to see what is what, and then making decisions based on that data. So these are the steps that we call creativity for a computer. But is that really creativity? I'm not really sure. So every piece, every little bit of data adds something to that puzzle, and then AI can figure out what the person wants. And then you can also say, then you can always say like, yes, but companies want something that's custom, that's handmade, right? Because we don't want the same website as our competitor. And yes, that is true, especially for the higher end companies, higher end brands, but that's not all companies. Many companies will be okay with AI generated assets because it looks different enough. You can already see that right now in the market with companies like Wix and Squarespace, who have become quite big with a pretty limited amount of features. So many smaller companies, they don't really care. And a lot of the web industry works for these smaller companies, right? So what about all the other designers that don't have these premium clients? This is something to seriously think about. Point number 4, developers can also use AI. Let me take one sip. Okay, so this is quite funny. Designers can now generate code with ChatGPT, so the designers would theoretically not need the developers anymore, right? But the developers can also say the same, because they can use these tools to generate designs. So what will happen? This can create camps, because we know that the designers, they need developers, but designers, they want all of their ideas to be developed, and the developers are then like, wait, this is way too unrealistic, and this is not going to happen. And then the developers say, oh, this is way too much that the designers are doing. It's always a little bit of a battle. So maybe with these tools, the camps will be different and they will need each other less. It's not that easy though. I think actually that developers have a big advantage. Because the thing is, when you make one little mistake in your code, this can cause your whole product to break. And then the designers don't know how to fix it if they would only use tools to generate code. But for developers, it's not a big deal when there is a little mistake in the design, because it doesn't break anything, it just works. It just looks a little bit less good, or the experience is not so good, but it still works. And the developers can already develop things on their own without the designers sometimes. This is not the other way around. Designers always will need developers in order to create something. And I'm not talking about simple websites here where you just can do it with a no-code tool like Elementor, but I'm talking about more serious products here, more serious websites. This is really visible in the WordPress market, where developers run most of the WordPress worlds. And this creates a situation where there are many products that are technically good, but do not really have a nice user experience, the design is not that good, and therefore they don't create a really big impact, or at least they could have a much better, bigger impact if the experience was a little bit nicer and a little bit more focused on the user. Let's take a look at a few examples. I think the best example here is Contact Form 1. Before we had the page builders in WordPress, if we wanted to contact form, we will need it to use a plugin like this. This is the biggest one on WordPress. But how does it look? Like this. You actually already editing the code. It's there are so many menus, and this one is not even the worst, but it can be kind of overwhelming for a beginner if they just want a simple contact form. You also have WP Forms, which is a lot nicer, but this plugin is still the biggest. So that's interesting. You have CPT UI, which is for custom post types, what Milan just explained, how you can create custom lists with posts within your website. And this is how the plugin looks. It's just a list with data. They didn't even put in effort to create some columns or some extra shadows or some explanation on what this is. This is a massive plugin. Now, ACF has introduced custom post type since a month or so, but this has been like this for years. If you just wanted to create a simple custom post type, this was a pretty good and big plugin. But it doesn't look that good. The experience is not that nice. WP Fastest Cache, one of the biggest cache plugins on WordPress. This is how it looks. That's not bad because they have the info boxes. You can click on it, you can get more info. It's already a little bit better because it at least explains what it is, but maybe they could do a little bit better job, right? And then the worst one of all, Child Theme Configurator. Look at, oh wait, this mess. This is painful to look at. Look at the contrast on the blue text on the black text on the blue background. It's just horrible. So, yeah, this one. The truth is that humans make most decisions based on emotions. So if you want to have a big impact with your product or a bigger impact, then you should really understand your user and make the product according to their level of understanding. This is why many WordPress companies have a bigger market share, even though their product isn't better. You could say that that's unfair, but at the end of the day, the market doesn't really care, and you shouldn't care as well, because if you build a product and your goal should be to have a big impact on a lot of people, right? Of course, you want to make some money, but a positive impact is the most important thing. And if you're never going to reach them, then how are you going to create that impact? Or you reach them, but then the user is very confused and then they don't want to use your product and they're frustrated, which is not good for your brand. So, this is a quote, famous quote from Charles Darwin about adapting. It's not the most intelligent one that survives or the strongest one, but the one that is most able to adapt. And this comes from analyzing nature. And we, of course, are also just a species on this planet. So, the conclusion is we need to adapt. I am not so optimistic that we're just fine and our work is going to be easier. I think we need to adapt, especially as designers. But how? Let's take a look at a few examples on how we can adapt. I have 3 ideas for designers. The first one is to focus more on user experience design. And then especially adapting from visual design to user experience design. Most of you know that the design process doesn't only consist of making things look pretty. This is what people that don't understand our work think what we do, but it's a lot more, because before you arrive at the visual design process where you can make things look pretty, you have to know a lot of things in order to decide what you're actually going to design. This is an image. It's based on graphic design, but you could also, you should replace that with visual design. I found this on the internet, but the argument is the same. On the left, you can see a visual focused worker, which is very specialized. So they really know tools like Figma and Elementor. And they're also pixel perfect, which is also dangerous because that's something that AI can do pretty well. But then on the right, you see a UX designer who is user-focused. This means that they need to talk to users to understand the product. So they need to see how the users use their product in order to get new information. Information that the AI can never have because it's way too specific for that information, for that situation. So the tools may become easier, but creating a good user experience will stay challenging. And in order to do that, you will need good research. You will really need to understand your audience in order to create a good experience that fits their needs and desires. And if you understand who your target audience is, then you can also be valuable to the marketing team. Because AI can only work with the data that there is, but if it doesn't know, then it doesn't really work that well. So UX is simply a lot harder to understand for UI because it's way less structured and it has way less patterns. People always say that the computer is good in creative work, but that's not the case because it needs patterns to function. UX design comes down to doing good research online and offline and then compiling all of that info to create new insights that can then improve the product. And this is what goes wrong in the WordPress market a lot of the times. So visual design, like typography, colors, and styling, are based on patterns because we know that, for example, luxury websites use specific kind of fonts and specific kind of colors, and barber websites have a specific kind of style, and then it can depend on the brand, but there are patterns that you can find, and that's why these companies like Framer can actually create results that are quite impressive. With just a simple prompt. Okay, so we should focus more on UX design instead of visual design and graphic design as designers. The second point is AI tools. I think it's just very smart to learn many different AI tools because most people will not have the time to do that, especially developers, because they will use probably all of their time to create the products, right? So if you know how to use these tools, then you're going to have a big advantage. Don't be scared. I think most of you guys are not scared of it. Some people are, but just take your time. I would say every week, an hour, to find some new tools because it's going so fast. And the third solution is soft skills. So what is that? For example, communication. So if you don't know what hard skills and soft skills are, hard skills are things that the computer can really do. So for example, Figma, coding is also a hard skill. Photoshop, those are hard skills, but soft skills are things that the computer cannot do. So for example, communication, understanding a person, emailing, calling on the phone. So developers, like I said, will have enough work with creating the new product, so becoming better at these soft skills will be very valuable in the future because communication with the client or the user will always be valuable no matter what kind of tool is going to be invented. Recap. So what we're going to do as designers, we're going to focus more on user experience design. We're going to become better at that. That's my advice. Instead of becoming more visually appealing in our skills, we're going to spend some time to learn AI tools because that's going to be a really valuable skill in the future. And we're going to work on our soft skills because that is something that the computer is not really easily able to replicate. Even though ChatGPT can do some kind of emails, you still need information from the client to make it happen. So I would say this is my 3 tips for you guys. So stay optimistic, positive, but also smart. Don't create the tunnel vision pro, and just stay smart. That is my advice for all of the designers here. And I want to thank you for listening.
Thank you, Rino. This is good news for us UX designers.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, are there any questions?
Hi.
Hi.
All right, since you already have your plan for adapting, I can assume that you're probably doing something in your client work already. So I would like to maybe hear a bit more about your workflow, especially in using AI tools in your day-to-day design work.
Okay. For now, to be honest, I just use ChatGPT. I still haven't implemented a lot of the AI tools. But I am actually waiting for Figma to launch something, because I don't work with Framer, but this just came out this week, so this is really like new. But I do use ChatGPT in order to create text for the website. Let's see. Yeah, I think I'm already pretty prepared personally, because I studied UX design. So this is also how I approach my YouTube channel. Because I see a lot of people getting into design that just see design as this cool visual thing. They want to create things that look cool. But I was already always focused really on the UX. And yes, I did create things in XD and Figma, and I spent a lot of time on that. So that will become faster. I do not want to change my pricing, because I think the upcoming 5 years are gold mine, because the companies will not, most of the companies will not understand what we are doing, and we can use this time to more easily make money. Of course, this is an ethical discussion, and you should do what feels good to you, right? You shouldn't like misuse it. But yeah, I think personally, I'm pretty well prepared, because I already was a UX designer, but I should also do more. Yeah. Okay.
You can provide it with some actual hex codes and it can spit out something that you can reflect on and use.
Oh, that's a smart idea to add hex codes to the prompt in a tool like Midjourney. Yeah, I'm not.
You can hack your time that you would spend, for example, crawling Pinterest or something.
Yes, yeah.
At least for a hack.
Yeah, okay, that's a good idea. For now, Midjourney is not really good at creating realistic websites. Yeah, but like this, a tool like that, if you can maybe use Midjourney and then a combination with like Framer that can generate, I think that will definitely cut the time of researching in half. Yeah, that's a good idea to give it more input. Yeah, thank you.
Any more questions?
Hey, Rino.
Hi.
So I wanted to ask, are you using currently any AI in your video content creation process? And are you afraid that video content creation process can be impacted by the AI in the future? So far, I don't know any tools that are going to create the entire video, but is that something that we're looking for in the future?
Okay. Yeah, so this is an interesting one. I have tried to let GPT write one video for me. I wasn't really happy with how it turned out, but I even said to it like, hey, create a video in the style of Living with Pixels, which is the name of my channel. And it did analyze how I did my intro, so it already knows me a little bit. And then it created like 6 steps. I did use the 6 steps, but the actual content, I did change almost all of it. It's not smart enough yet to understand things like Elementor, because I tried also like, hey, write a video for me on how to create an Elementor header template. That was completely wrong. So that's not good enough. I am definitely waiting for Adobe to release Premiere Pro auto-cutting silences. Because my tutorials are, I record my screen, microphone, camera, and then there's like a 1-hour video, and if you delete all of the silences, that could really be dangerous for my video editor. And what your question was, oh yeah, for me, if it's a threat for my job, yeah, I don't know. I think it's a bigger threat for bloggers, because if you read a blog post now, how do you know if it's written by ChatGPT or it's written by an actual person? But a YouTuber is a face, and yeah, you could say we have deepfake, but even if you would make a YouTube channel with a fake influencer and a deepfake, you could do it, but there's also someone behind it who has to understand what kind of content to create. I think it's a little bit too far in the future to say that YouTubers can be replaced, because I think actually that people do not trust, they cannot trust blogs anymore right now, so maybe they will create more traffic to YouTube because they see actual faces. So, but maybe I'm just too optimistic about my own job. Could be. What, sorry?
You scared us, so I can scare you back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there is a chance that I also need to adapt in the future. Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Thank you. I suggest we continue with the questions in the hall during the after, so feel free to approach Rino and Milan as well. Hvala vam.